The Stack. People, Business, Technology. With Dan Tomaszewski of Everything MSP.
Hello, everybody. Dan Tomaszewski here. Welcome to another episode of The Stack, where we focus on people, business, and technology. Today, we're going to dive into a topic that sits right at the center of every MSP sales process, and that's quoting. Whether you're using a manual process like Word and Excel, or you're exploring a dedicated quoting tool, your quoting process isn't just about generating numbers, it's about the customer experience. Joining me today is Brian Laufer, who is the Vice President of QuoteWorks, and I'll bring him here in just one moment. He's one of the most respected names in the quoting and proposal space for MSPs. We're going to be talking to him about how you can evaluate quoting tools to find the right fit for your business, whether you're upgrading from those spreadsheets or you're considering moving to another platform. And let's go ahead and bring in Brian. How you doing today, Brian?
Great. How you doing today, Dan?
I'm doing awesome. It's good to see you. And I'm sure you've got some warm, sunny weather there down in Orlando.
Yeah, it's only 85 degrees. It's fine.
Oh, why? That's nice. We had a hailstorm here today. It was wild. I mean, it's in the 50s here in Michigan, but a little bit of thunder and then pea-sized hail came down. So tis the season. So
that it is.
So we're not here to talk about the weather. We're here to talk about quoting tools and the quoting process and all that fun stuff. So I just want to kick things off and get things started. One of the things in my intro, I was talking about that manual process and, how some MSPs are relying on using Word or Excel for their quoting process. And, it is hard to believe that is still happening, but it is, regardless of, whether that's right or wrong, let's face it, there are still situations where that's happening. And I think sometimes it's just a matter of learning about what else is out there, why there are better ways. And once you learn about that, then I think all of a sudden, that light bulb, pops, and then you start to connect the dots. And then you're realizing, it's all about that business outcome of how it helps you be more efficient, get those quotes done quicker, not having to procrastinate because of the pain of getting a quote out there, all that crazy stuff. But so with that being said, what are some key things that an MSP should consider before making the jump to a dedicated quoting solution?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good starting point. And I do want to say too, before we start, with all of this, we're talking about quoting solutions, but really at the core of it, it's when you're evaluating any solution. This isn't just for quoting, which is
True.
good to talk about.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about the basics here. We're talking about, you have to find out where your pain points are right now. So like in your quoting process, where are your pain points? Is it, something to do with, searching for quotes because it's not in a database? Is it because of integrations? Is it because it's taking too long? Is it because, you lost a sale or because something is broken? I mean, all of these things, except for the sale part, you could apply to anything. And really for most of the things we're going to be talking about, it applies to any solution that you're going to be evaluating. But really, but when it comes to quoting, I mean, it really does come down to time is money. So, I always look at, what's broken, how does it integrate, and what can I do to make things better? If you're asking yourself those questions, you're going to be on the right path when evaluating any solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and I think those are just those key areas, just because, when you make a decision, when you make that investment, again, we mentioned business outcome, but you're ultimately looking at that business case, just like our clients are looking at, what is the business case? What is this going to do for me? How is it going to help me become better in my business? As they're looking at MSPs, as far as deciding to bring an MSP on board, same thing in this case of looking at a new solution to add to your stack. So
Exactly.
totally, of course, when you take a look at all the solutions that are out there, you jump in, you Google quoting solutions, there's all kinds of products out there. There's a lot of flashy tools out there that look great in the demos, but in the real world scenarios, those real world workflows, it's not always the case. And again, I think you bring up a great point. Is this really does apply to any vendor product that you're looking at? What are some red flags or shiny object traps that MSPs should watch out for?
Yeah, so the first thing I would do before getting into any demo with a sales rep, document what you're currently doing.
Okay.
Because it's important to know, okay, what am I doing now? What do I want it to look like? And the reason I say that is because in most of these demos that you're going to get, you're going to be going through a PowerPoint slide and they're just going to be clicking through and you're going to be like, but I need to know how to do, and they're already down to the next slide. So
Right.
it's important to know what your process is so that you can ask the question at the right time and you get them. My salespeople will hate me saying this, but you get them out of their flow, so you actually get the real answer.
Yeah.
As far as what you want things to, that way, they're not just clicking through, reading from a script, and they're not just a robot. I mean, you could done the same thing with going to ChatGPT and asking questions, but you're
Right.
not actually getting the actual answer, as a day-to-day user. So the first thing I would do is, make sure you're asking the questions because you already know what your documented steps are. And number two, I would also, make sure that you ask them to show you how to do what you want them to do. So don't just have them go through the PowerPoint, but rather say, hey, I need to do X, Y, and Z. How do I do that in your solution? Have them show it to you rather than say, yes, it can do that. And
Right.
that's the first thing. That's the first thing that I always see as a big, gotcha, because they're not able to do that, or it's going to take them, 2 weeks to set up that special environment.
Yeah.
Whereas all of us are all doing the same thing, especially if it's an MSP centric quoting tool. You guys are all quoting the same things.
Right.
you know,
Exactly.
I mean, you might have a little special sauce, but it's not something that is going to take you way out of, the conversation.
Yeah, and that brings up a great point because I think we assume a lot, when we're going through, sometimes terminology makes it sound, not that it's being deceitful. I don't mean that, but
Oh yeah,
it might have a particular term, and you make an assumption like, oh, that's perfect, that's what I'm looking for. But in the reality, how it actually plays out might be a little bit different. And so our interpretation of what that terminology is could be completely different than what the real world play out could be. So yeah, I think that's a great point. And the other thing too is, I do like what you're saying as far as, knowing what you currently have. And I think it does make sense just to document that from, like before you jump on that call, go through your process. Like if you're doing a quote today in your current process, pull up a sheet on, another screen and start typing the things in there of what you're doing. Because sometimes, if you're just going to say it off the cuff when you're on a call and doing a demo, you might forget about some certain things that you're all of a sudden you're like, holy cow, I totally forgot about something that's a deal breaker. And you want to
exactly.
know that up front.
Very good. Yeah, I mean, and plus, in that process, you may actually figure out, well, why don't I just do this? And
Yeah,
sometimes it's that solution that you're currently using, even if it's Word or Excel, might be a better solution than jumping on that shiny object. So
exactly. Exactly. So, you often stress the importance of testing a quoting solution rather than just watching the canned demo. Can we, jump a little bit more and why it is so critical to run the tool through your actual workflow before committing? And, I know we talked about it during the demo, but just, I guess, jumping a little bit deeper into that.
yeah, so one, you actually know what you're going to be getting, because even if they're able to show you, hey, this is how you do X, Y, and Z, they didn't necessarily show you what it took to get to X, Y, and Z. So that way you can actually use it in your current flow. You can use it with your current integrations. So, you might actually figure out that, hey, I like this. This is something I never even thought of before. And being able to kick around the tires, you're like, wow, this actually is that amazing. Or oh, this doesn't actually even come close to doing what the sales rep said it was going to do. So
Yeah.
it's important to understand the process rather than just, take their word for it. And, it's sometimes, I mean, I'm guilty of it too, being in software. You can do a little smoke and mirrors and, it's a
Yeah,
little, until you actually are kicking the tires, you don't really know.
exactly. So let's talk about those free or those ultra low cost quoting tools that are out there. They of course they all sound appealing because all too often we look at price when we should really be looking at what it can do for us.
Mhm.
Um, but what are the risks that MSPs need to be aware of, especially around that functionality, data lock in and renewal costs?
Yeah, those are really good points. So the first thing is like usually with some of those low cost tools, they'll bundle it with other solutions, so they'll make it appear like it's a lot less expensive than it actually is. And you'll typically see that with like the PSAs or the RMM tools, but and what ends up happening is they sell you on what you're paying in day one. But the thing is you usually end up paying more on the second year or the third year, or speaking of third year, you might be getting locked into a 3-year contract without realizing you're locked into a 3-year contract. So that's something to consider. But
Right.
I say that, and I should preface by saying, if you're coming from Word or Excel, going to like one of those free tools, even if they don't increase the price, that's going to be a huge leap forward from what you were doing before. So I would, I'm not saying that all those solutions are bad. It just depends on what you're currently doing.
Yeah.
And it definitely with those free solutions though, you're going to be running into some vendor lock-in, like you said. And what I mean by that is, if you switch, PSA tools down the road, or you switch vendors down the road, you may not be able to have those integrations that you're used to having. And so now, not only
Yeah.
are you switching one platform, but you're switching multiple platforms, which then becomes a problem, a much bigger problem than what you would have expected.
Yeah, and and on that note, I guess when you think through, if you're using something very manual process, and let's say it is the Word and Excel, type of scenario, and you jump to something that is, one of those low cost solutions that really doesn't have all the real bells and whistles. That might seem like a leap in the beginning, but I think it will wear off pretty fast because all of a sudden you're like, I really should have been here already. And I should be here already and looking at the next level. And so it's going to be short term, and because all of a sudden you're going to be like, wow, this is great, but now I want it to do all these other things, and it doesn't have those capabilities. And like you
Right.
said, you don't want to have to make another change.
Right, and that's a good point because, far too often we're thinking about where we wanna be today versus where we wanna be, 2 years from now, 3 years from now,
Right.
and what that's gonna take. I mean, it's like the road building analogy where they add an extra lane today, whereas they should have added 2 or 3 more instead of actually doing what they needed to do,
Yeah.
for the future.
Yeah, and I think too, some of those lower end solutions aren't going to have the integrations, and how important is it to have those integrations to your your PSA, your CRM, whatever the case may be, and also your accounting package.
Yeah, I mean, integrations are much more than what they seem to be. And what I mean by that is those integrations can be the difference between a quote taking 5 minutes versus a quote taking 20 minutes. And
Right.
that means a lot. And not just on that initial save, but also on revisions and whatnot as well. So what I'm talking about there is, integrations with your PSA. When you save a quote in, say, quoteworks or a majority of our competitors as well, you're actually going to have that opportunity created for you. You're going to have line items automatically added for you. So your sales rep isn't going to have to remember, oh, I forgot to update that opportunity, so my funnel is all messed up. No, it's automatically going to be up to date for you. And when you revise that quote, that's automatically going to be updated as well. And then when it comes to like integrations with vendors, it's huge because you may quote something today, at X price, but that item may have gone up 20% or down 20%, or maybe not even in stock anymore, and being able to click on a button, or just not even that, but just revising the quote, and it'll automatically update for you.
Yeah.
So you don't have to go back and forth on those, hundreds of items, maybe from that Cisco bomb, to make sure
Right.
your pricing is right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that brings up a great point. In today's world with, with tariffs out there, that's having an impact on pricing and things can fluctuate. I mean, we have MSPs that are part of our group that they actually put in their quotes that the pricing on the hardware is only valid the day of. Um, so they've gone all the way to the, I don't want to say it's extreme, but they've gone to that point where we just they can't take that chance. And so there's that. But also, I mean, we just went through a ton of Windows 11 upgrades,
Hmm.
so lots of hardware. And so availability was horrendous for MSPs. And so you might be quoting something today that looks like it's in stock, and of course sometimes clients drag their feet, maybe a week or two to finalize the quote and approve it. And so in that case, all of a sudden there might be an availability issue, and to be able to easily see that does make the difference in the process. And again, I
Right.
think I'll just throw out one more thing too. I
Yeah.
think the thing is, um, we take things for granted, like time. Little things like that do save a lot of time, and we don't have time. We can't invent time. We can't bottle it, and nobody sells it, but we can help ourselves. Reduce time it takes to do things, and that's buying back time essentially.
Right. Very true. Yeah, and just to go back to your point about like things not being available anymore, that's where those integrations come into play. And that's why like what we do is we make it really easy. So say something was in stock at TD Synnex originally, but it's not today. You can actually switch on the fly to switch to Ingram Micro, or maybe a totally different type of vendor altogether. Maybe the big disties don't have it anymore, but Amazon Business does.
Yeah.
So, you have that capability and that workflow built in with those integrations, working with the vendors you already do.
And for our audience that hasn't seen this before, I mean, you pull up a product and you can see which vendors have it, what stock they have, what the prices are, and also you can see which warehouses have it, so you can find the one closest to you. Correct?
That is correct. And that's one of the key things when it comes to integrations, having a real-time integration versus an annual, like a nightly import, like, because that's what some of the tools do. Because the
Yeah.
problem is if you're used to, being able to pick up at like the Chicago warehouse, it may have been in stock at 8 a.m., but it's not in stock at 2 p.m.
Right.
So
Exactly.
that is something to keep in mind when it comes to a true integration.
Yeah, and for like us here in Michigan, whether it's that Chicago warehouse or an Indiana warehouse,
Mhm.
you can get it next day ground UPS, right?
Right.
And so, if you have an urgent need for it, and all of a sudden it's out of stock at that warehouse and it has to jump to maybe Pennsylvania, then all of a sudden we're talking a few more days, and that impacts your client experience.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's awesome. So finally, as we work to wrap up here, for an MSP that's pretty happy with their current quoting process, but they maybe feel some pressure where they need to modernize things, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just, go back to what we've been saying is, document what you're currently doing, evaluate what tools are out there. I mean, I shouldn't say this, especially if you're a QuoteWorks user, but it is good because,
Right.
you want to see what else is out there, because, maybe the grass is greener on the other side, maybe it's not. And sometimes talking to your vendor saying, "Hey, I saw this in XYZ product. Do you do it?" is
Yep.
something that you can actually, you may find out that, hey, I implemented 3 years ago and they implemented it 6 months ago, that new feature that you wanted, you had no idea was available.
Right.
So seeing what's out there, because it's we all compete against each other. We're all doing the same things, but it's important to find out, what tools are available, what tools are coming out. Like, we just came out with a new Pax 8 integration. No other quoting tool has that, that is dedicated like that, but I know, a year from now, everybody's going to have it, so, it's one of those things. So, but it's important to find out what's out there, talk to your vendors, find out, what's on their roadmap, and that way you can make sure that, maybe the tool you have now is perfect. Maybe it's not, maybe they're done developing, so it's important to find out what's on their roadmap so you can continue to grow as your business grows.
I've got to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure your users, when you came out with the Pax 8 integration, were ecstatic.
They were. That was like the best thing we've ever done.
Yeah.
I was like, right now, our CSMs are doing a call campaign, and it's like 50% use Pax 8, and they're like, thank you. What do I have to pay? And we're like, nothing. It's already included. It's there. All you got to do is set it up. There's nothing to it.
That is awesome. So I guess the other thing too is, how can we, how can you tell if a change is something that's truly needed, or if it's just some kind of hype that is being pushed?
Yeah, I mean, I think, really it just comes down to, figuring out if there's problems in your current system. I mean, that's what it is. And it doesn't matter if it's your quoting tool, your PSA tool, your RMM tool, your Windows, it doesn't really matter. It's like, did you lose a sale? Did a sales rep make a mistake that should have been approved by somebody? Is there something that I could have done as a sales manager or as the president of the company that could have made this a better outcome? It's those sort of things that you need to look at. And then also, when we're talking about that shiny tool, kicking the tires around, like, as an example, we had a competitor that came out with a new UI. It was shiny. It was real shiny. But you could only view 6 items at a time. I don't know. I'm sure you've worked on a large Cisco bomb before. They have more than 6 items at a time, and it wasn't just to scroll six items, but you had to page 6 items at a time.
Geez.
So seeing, actually using it in real life versus that demo makes a big difference.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Brian, this has been awesome. A great conversation. I love how you framed the quoting as really part of this sales experience. It's just not a step in the process. And I thank you for that. For everybody listening, remember, don't fall for the shiny demo. Make sure that the quoting solution that you choose actually works, how you sell, and integrate smoothly into your workflow, because that is so critical. It's got to be the right fit for you. And Brian, thanks again for joining me here on the Stack, sharing those insights, helping MSPs, make smarter, more confident decisions. For anybody that's out there that wants to learn more about QuoteWorks and help streamline your MSP process, you can learn more at quoteworks.com. Check them out there. Additionally, if you go to everythingmsp.com, you can search for QuoteWorks. We have some information on our site. You can reach them directly from our site as well. And for all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, everybody, have a great day, and we'll talk to you all soon. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Stack.